Like all anime enthusiasts, I have that one gateway show that got me into anime. That show was Fairytail. Fairytail is a shonen fantasy story that is written by Hiro Mashima. He also wrote other popular stories, Brave Master and Eden Zero, both of which I haven't actually read or watched it, but I very much enjoyed Fairytail. The story of Fairytail revolves around Lucy Heartfilia. Lucy is a young mage and she would very much like to join the Fairytail Guild. Lucy is a celestial mage and has a very bubbly personality. Lucy has a huge desire to join the Fairytail Guild, and we meet her in a port town where she does eventually meet Natsu, who is a fairytale wizard. Now, this story revolves around Lucy finding her feet in the Fairytail Guild, going on missions, just trying to get some money. It is a typical shonen show, so as you can imagine, it is long. One of the best things about the show for me though is the fact that it does actually grow up with the audience. The start of the show is quite family friendly. It could be watched by anyone, probably not children, but preteen and upwards. It was a show that had comedy, it had drama, it was a shonen show that is just fun to watch. But later on, I would probably say from around episode 100, it started bringing in a lot more serious storylines, and it did really feel like it did mature over time. My favourite seasons, in fact, are the later seasons. My most favourite being the Tartaros arc. The Tartaros arc was based around demons, and this was the third last arc, I want to say. It was a very good arc. It is still to this day one of my favourites. Anime in the UK is something that you don't really come across naturally. I was introduced to Fairytail when one of my friends sat me down one day and said, "We're watching this show because you're going to love it." And I did. There were a couple of seasons that weren't all that fantastic. Like most shows that run for this long, there's always those arcs that are a little bit tedious to watch. They are by no means bad arcs, but compared to the other arcs that are surrounding it, not the best. So for example, in between the S-Class Trials and the Grand Magic Games, which are two of my most favourite arcs, there was the Key of the Starry Heavens arc, which I understand was not in the manga, but this season comes right off the end of a time skip, and unfortunately, the pacing of that one wasn't the best. There are a couple other seasons that weren't my most favourite, but still weren't by far like the worst ones. I think what really solidified me watching Fairytail was the Phantom Lord arc, which is actually where we meet my favourite character. I recently drew her name is Juvia, and she is fabulous. I have drawn dozens of characters from Fairytail. In fact, the very first time that I picked up a pencil since high school was to draw Mavis, who I will not get into all that much because it is a bit of a spoiler, but she is the first character that I ever drew since high school. However, there has been a couple of characters that I very much enjoy drawing, and one of them being my favourite character, Juvia. I will be giving a couple of tiny spoilers here, so if you are wanting to watch Fairytail and haven't done it already, I imagine most people have by now, but I will be talking a little bit about Juvia here. So Juvia was introduced in the Phantom Lord arc as a bad guy. She was one of the Phantom Lord's Element 4, who were the S-Class wizards within that guild, and she was badass. She was chosen because she has great control over water and in fact can actually turn her body into water, which is fabulous. Being part of Phantom Lord, she actually was introduced as a bad guy, and she went up against Grey. Now, what can I say about Grey and Juvia? So, from the first minute that Juvia actually met Grey, she instantly fell in love with him, and this was something that was carried on throughout the rest of the show. It, of course, was a little bit difficult for Juvia, balancing out the fact that she was actually there to take down Fairytail, but then there was Grey, and so they had their little fight, and eventually Grey actually did defeat her, and through X, Y and Z she then actually joined the Fairytail Guild along with Gajil, who was another fantastic character, and I really liked him, but he was more of a bad guy, and his joining Fairytail was a bit weird. However, he did become one of my favourite characters, and in the end he was a hugely loved character by a lot of people, including myself, and I was very happy that they actually brought him into it. However, they did that usual anime thing where there was this big bad guy who then became a good guy. So there is that. However, Juvia did eventually join Fairytail, mostly for her love of Grey. She fit in quite well with the Fairytail Guild, and as the arcs went on, her character grew and grew and grew, and although there was the scenes where she was still this very much obsessed with Grey and nothing else character, the other scenes that she had were absolutely fantastic, and the thing that really solidified her being one of my favourites was actually a scene in the Tartaros arc. So in the Tartaros arc, it was a bad situation as it was all round. However, there was a very, very deadly demon who is one of the 9 demon gates of Tartaros. So the 9 demon gates were Tartaros' extremely powerful demons, the most powerful of the whole guild. I think we can call it a guild. And Keys was a member of the 9 demon gates of Tartaros. One of his abilities is that his entire body is made up of these magic particles, which can nullify a wizard's magic, really, which unfortunately, if a wizard loses all of this, they will die. And Juvia, with her body made up entirely of water, she ended up going up against Keys. Now, this fight between Juvia and Keys was definitely one of those ones that really, I mean, I already absolutely loved Juvia for almost this entire show, but then as soon as this happened, this really solidified her just badass nature and how much she cared not just for Grey but for the whole of Fairytail as well. And she saved a lot of people's asses that day, because even up until that point, a lot of her motivations and a lot of her drive was always focused around Grey. And even though this fight was to also save Grey, it was also to save Fairytail. Since watching Fairytail, I've really struggled to find a character who I found more endearing and badass than Juvia, and she has been my best girl since then, she really has. But I had never sat down and actually drawn her properly. Juvia, again, was one of the first people that I drew. I think she was my second ever drawing, and it was terrible, just saying. But since I got better at drawing, I never went back and actually tried really hard to draw her. So recently, the Fairytail 100 Year Quest was coming out, and it got me thinking about Fairytail again. Now, I would say I actually haven't watched the 100 Year Quest yet, because I've had many other shows to actually catch up on. It is on the list to watch. However, when I saw that this had been announced, it was something that got me thinking about Fairytail again and what Fairytail meant to me, why I watched it in the first place, and why I loved the characters that I loved. And I went and drew Juvia, which you have been sitting watching in the background of me talking. So Juvia is a fabulous character, and she's always been a fabulous character. However, another character that I really, really enjoyed and really kickstarted another part of my abilities was Jackal. Now, Jackal was one of the first demon gates that you actually met, and it was very strange up until this point. Most of the bad guys, apart from the ongoing big bad guys, there hadn't been a lot of, like most shonen shows, there hadn't been a lot of bad guys that were just bad because they wanted to be bad. Most bad guys were bad because this bad thing happened to them in the past. You know, there's always a reason for a bad guy to be bad. And I was really quite shocked when they brought along Jackal, because the only bad guys had been big bad guys. And this was just a grunt who was just bad for the sake of being bad. He didn't really seem to have any other reason behind it. And then you find out he was a demon. And it was very, very strange, because you hadn't really come across demons all that much in Fairytail. The only demons you had heard about were the really, really, really big bad ones. So finding out that Jackal was this bad guy who was a demon, it was refreshing, actually. Now, what I would say is I also watched the dub of Fairytail for the whole thing, but mostly because it was easier for me as a first-time watcher of anime to watch the dub. And honestly, the dub's pretty good. And in saying that, one of the things that stood out the most to me about Jackal's character was the way that the voice actor actually voiced him, because I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Because Jackal is a jackal, and the voice that the voice actor gave him was absolutely it was just spot on. It was really, really, really spot on. And he was voiced by Rico Fajardo, who you have probably heard now playing people like Mirio in My Hero Academia. He plays Nozel Silva in Black Clover, plays the main character in Blue Lock. At the time when he had been voicing Jackal, I went ahead and I drew Jackal, which you're watching at the moment behind me, and I tagged Rico in it, and we had a conversation about digital art. Now, at the time, I had never really done digital art. I had a graphics tablet, I had tried to draw on it, found it too hard and never went back to it. After this conversation, however, I then went and drew Jackal digitally, and that's actually how my whole digital journey began, was because of this drawing and, well, Rico. So although Jackal wasn't exactly a main character, he was only in it for very few scenes. He had his first scene with the fights that he was doing there, and then later on he came back for a few more scenes. But apart from those scenes, he wasn't really a big character. But because of how his character was brought into it, the kind of shock of him being this demon, and he was this powerful, just cruel character in a show like Fairytail, and then add that on top of the fact that that then solidified my digital journey, that character means quite a bit. For myself anyway. I do find him as a fantastic character, so when you're watching Fairytail, please look out for him. And if you're watching the dub, listen out for Rico, because he's awesome. But since starting my drawing journey, these are the two characters that really solidified my love for Fairytail. Now these days, I don't really watch Fairytail all that much. After I finished watching Fairytail about 4 times, because it was the only show that I had watched and I was really obsessed with it, so I watched it 4 times. I then went and watched a bunch more shows, and I got really into anime, and I've drawn quite a lot more from anime, so I wanted to sit down and talk about the characters and the inspirations behind why I want to draw these characters, the reasons why I love the shows, and I thought it was very fitting to start at Fairytail because that is where my journey started, was in Fairytail. So if you haven't watched Fairytail before, I would strongly recommend it if you like shonen shows. If you have someone who you are looking to get into a show, if it is mostly aimed towards, you know, pre-teens, teens, at the start of the show, so it's a very good show for people like that to get into. I was an adult. It was only 8 years ago that I actually started watching anime, and this was the first show that I watched, and I still absolutely loved it. It is a very easy watch, it is a very fun watch. It has comedy, it has drama, it has a lot of action, it's got a lot of fights, obviously, shonen. It has a really interesting plot that goes along in the background from it, but it is a show that I would recommend most for people who are just getting into anime, or for people who absolutely love shonen shows and haven't seen it yet. Anyway, I hope you got something from this video. It's got me thinking about Fairytail again. I'm actually listening to the soundtrack of Fairytail in my ears right now. It is by Yasuharu Takahashi, and they also did a lot of the Naruto soundtracks. Now, I absolutely adore the Fairytail soundtracks. It's got a very Celtic feel to it, which for me, being Scottish, is awesome. But it's very good and it's very epic, and there's some very beautiful songs in there as well. Even if you don't really watch Fairytail, please go listen to the soundtrack because it is absolutely incredible. It's all on Spotify as well, just so you know. And that is just another layer to Fairytail that makes it be one of those shows that I will always have fondly in my heart, even though I don't watch it as much anymore because I have so many other shows to watch, but I would strongly recommend it. So if you do love Fairytail, let me know down below what your favourite arcs were. Did you also agree that Tartaros is the best arc in the entire show? It is so awesome. I love Tartaros so much. Let me know if you agree with me down below. Or if you haven't watched Fairytail, let me know if this has actually made you want to watch it. Either way, I would just love to hear your thoughts on it. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button below and subscribe for more, because I post every week. I also stream every Wednesday and Saturday over on Twitch, where I draw on Wednesdays, and on Saturdays I play some games. So come and hang out there if you want to say hi. But whether I see you on here, whether I see you on Twitch, whether I see you on any of my other social medias, I look forward to seeing you there, and I will catch you next time. Bye!